And we're live. A very good morning to you. Welcome along to Wednesday mornings Off the Ball AM, and it is a night of European football action that we're looking forward to a little bit later on in the show. We're going to have a bona fide Roma Ultra live in studio with us sometime around 9 o'clock this morning, and obviously Real Madrid are waiting in the final, so it promises to be a special night of European football no matter who you support. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well, but we're going to say a very hello first off this morning to Anthony Moyles. How you doing?
Morning, Ger.
And to Dave.
Hey lads.
You got a hello as well. How are you?
Oh, great, thanks. I'm good, yeah.
Keith Andrews was saying you were playing golf yesterday.
Yeah,
He said he was going to take the money off you.
Well, I beat him.
All right.
Yes, although beating him is probably a bit strong in that we were both absolute muck and I was just a little less muck than he was over the course of the 18 holes. But as is typical with most golf games, you smack a couple of good drives off 17 and 18 and you convince yourself, do you know what?
I'm good
Wasn't
at this.
that bad a day, I should come back and play again.
Yeah.
The first 16 holes, we were playing, the course destroyed us. We were playing in Balcarrick yesterday. We rained the whole way around, but never torrential enough to force you to walk in after a few.
Yeah.
It was just nice to play.
Sounds miserable though.
Yeah,
Off in the rain sounds
It
miserable.
wasn't. The company was good, which
Company's
is
good, yeah,
very
that
important.
makes up for it. Two things I wanted to start with this morning. We'll get to the world's worst hype man in a minute, but when you transferred to a club in Dublin, if you had played against your old club in Meath in Championship and you pinged one in a really important, I was going to say European match, but obviously it would have been a Leinster, both teams would have been successful, you would have celebrated, right? Shirt over the head. Come on.
Get the belly out.
Yeah.
You definitely would have celebrated. Yeah. Don't know if you'd rub it in too much, but you'd have to. You absolutely
Even
would
against your own parish.
You would. You'd still, like, I mean, you know, you're in the height of the moment. It's important to you. You've been building up for this game. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you know, you're on the pitch and, like, I mean, once you're up against whoever it is, you know, it would have been the same when you're playing guys who would have been really good friends with you in the inter-county panel, and then you play against them. It actually used to heighten kind of, you know, tension.
You'd rub it in more because you know they'll punch you then, but they'll forgive you afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like there'll be a short term. You'll be like, nice one, but I still scored.
I just think he really, like he went overboard and overboard and overboard with it. Like he was walking back to the centre circle and he was still doing it.
We're talking James Rodriguez here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
not his worst crime of the night, though.
No, on the non-celebration, it's a little bit different with James because he's on loan from Real Madrid. So it is his parent club. If you're trying to find an argument in his favour, it's
he's not
different.
Going back. They don't want him. They ran him out
it's
of
a
town.
2-year loan deal. Like he's never going back to the Bernabeu.
No.
And
he should have celebrated.
It's a Champions League semi-final. Like football is about winning, about scoring goals, about having fun when you score.
Far more controversy though, really, about him kicking the ball out of play. Now I missed this. What happened?
Well, there was a Real player down. Either injured or feigning injury.
Right.
It's always one of the two.
Yeah.
And Bayern they had the ball. They wanted to continue to attack. The clock was against them. The scoreboard was clearly against them. And James Rodriguez turns and puts the ball out of play so this player can get treatment.
Yeah.
In the last 10 minutes, pretty much every Real player went down at one stage, as is their want. And look, you can't blame them for that. Most teams would do something similar. We've seen Dublin do something similar over the years. It's not just exclusive to football or any other sport. But you could see his Bayern teammates actually asking him, "What are you doing? Why have you put this ball out?" It's up to the referee to put the ball out.
Did he get subbed off pretty soon afterwards?
Whistle. Well, he was still on the field heading into the last 10 minutes, so it wasn't the reason he was subbed off.
Really, it wasn't that like you're getting off now because we think that maybe you've had your head turned here.
I don't. Well, he played well. He played well last night. He did score. They missed a sitter as well, but. I was kind of a little annoyed looking at the non-celebration. I was at Old Trafford on Sunday and myself and Kilban went through Henrik Mkhitaryan for not celebrating against a club that basically shafted him for 2 years. I think I had it here, he made, in 2 seasons in the Premier League, made just 26 Premier League starts. He has no affiliation to this club. He's a manager that mocked him openly on at least one occasion. And he's arrived at the Emirates Stadium. He's already scored half the number of Premier League goals for Arsenal as he did in the 2 years at Manchester United, and he's apologising to the Old Trafford support for scoring against them. What are you doing?
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, you need the kind of, you need the swagger, you need the old Eric Cantona kind of swagger where you just stand up and look around at the crowd, and you need a bit of WWF to come in here. Like, that's the way they should be reacting. Like, you should be in front of the crowd. It literally should be you're getting a yellow card for celebrating too much.
The feeling would be amongst these players, I can only surmise that they feel that the supporters for whom they used to be playing for will think less of them if they celebrate.
Yeah.
I felt there was actually a loss of respect for Mkhitaryan at Old Trafford because he didn't celebrate. I remember watching the FA Cup. It was I think it might have been a 4th or 5th round tie at Old Trafford the season after Danny Welbeck left. And he arrives back with Arsenal and scores the winner. And he celebrates like he's got the winner in the World Cup final. Yeah. And I remember thinking at the time, fair play to you. Yeah. That's what you should be doing. Yeah. It's a sign to me of footballers being unable to make decisions for themselves.
Who brought it in? I don't actually remember the first time someone didn't celebrate against her. And why? Like the whole...
How recent is it? Are we going back 5 years? It doesn't
feel like it's a...
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's really an old thing. It feels like it's a pretty recent thing. Maybe it's, social media aspect, that we don't want to get absolutely abused. But they get abused anyway, and you're not going to turn everyone. But what they should have done, and as you say, they move around so much. Some of these players, especially if you're being loaned out your back, you're gone again. Rub it in. Rub it in, I'd say. Don't be listen, it was pitiful last night. And actually, even the Bayern players came over and went, "Oh, he's doing that," and they just turned away. Back.
Players who arrive to celebrate with you don't know what to do.
Yeah,
they're quite unsure as to what the circumstances
you should be shaking
are.
And going, "Come on!"
Yeah. I can see in some examples, for example, Henry going back to the Emirates with Barcelona, scoring in a Champions League. Henrik Larsson is probably the best example, going back to Parkhead and scoring the Champions League. I can understand him, like he's a club legend and he is very much Celtic through and through. I can understand him being reluctant to pull the jersey over his head and go celebrate, but at least just a little bit of a fist bump and high five your teammate. Keep it toned down.
Yeah. My favourite one ever is obviously Emmanuel Adebayor streaking the length of the pitch to celebrate in front of the fans, full knee slides. I'm like, that's 10 out of 10.
That was the best there's ever been.
He injured himself. He's an injury-prone footballer and he's totally risking it. It's like...
the fastest he's ever moved.
Yeah. He got a 3-match ban for that.
And probably the furthest he's ever run, probably,
Yeah. I'm definitely, there's a difference between, you can tone it down, but ultimately, if it is, that's what Mkhitaryan should have been doing.
Yeah.
I got screwed by you guys, so I'm going to do it now. Now, obviously, the other thing is it's a bit early in the match. Mkhitaryan, his team still lose.
And it's a pretty meaningless game.
Yeah.
Whereas
James should have been running in, getting the ball and running back to the centre circle.
True,
absolutely.
yeah.
That's the thing to do, and it's like,
come on, let's go. Yeah.
So you can actually deflect the opening for the celebration.
Because he did take the plaudits, but he wanted them from everybody.
But it's the apologising. It's the hands in the air, as if you're apologising. Don't put your hands in the air. Just walk away. Mo Salah apologising for scoring against Roma. What are you doing?
Absolutely.
Isn't that just magnificent?
You can see, absolutely kind of, oh my God, I can't believe I've run so far.
Yeah.
And there's the picture.
I'm never usually down this end when I'm up the far end.
Good man. Not even close to being in front of the City fans. Clearly in front of the Arsenal fans. Oh, my slide took me. Oh, look at you! I recognise you all from my time here. And then the other thing that we want to talk about before we get into today's is the David Haye-Tony Bellew fight, which is obviously the build-up to the last fight sickened a lot of people because it went on for about 4 years and Sky rammed it down your throat. This time, there's been a few programmes that I see advertised, but they're not running clips of it every 15 minutes on Sky Sports News for whatever reason, unless I'm not watching enough Sky Sports News these days, but it doesn't seem like it's been...
Yeah, I think you've probably just switched off or zoned out. It's certainly...
It's ramped up again, is it?
Yeah, I kind of noticed it yesterday. It's definitely ramped up a bit. Maybe not as much.
Yeah.
Because I think they told it last time.
The promotion of it has ramped up a little, but certainly the animosity is absent. Certainly from Hayes' side of things, it's absent in comparison to the last fight, which got pretty lowbrow at times, and he said some awful things in the build-up. That's just, he seems to have matured, thankfully, finally, in his late 30s.
He's obviously got an entirely new backroom team as well, including this guy who we hadn't seen before. Now, maybe he was there the last time, but I don't think so, and if he was, they were certainly keeping him hidden. This is Adam Morley, and he's been going viral with this Will Mackenzie-esque speech.
First of all, from Team Haye, Adam Morley.
The person who said history always repeats itself was wrong. It doesn't always repeat itself. Two things might repeat themselves. You lot screaming and shouting and Tony Bellew playing games. They may repeat themselves, but you know what won't repeat itself? You know what? This time David's going to win. This time he will, because you know it as well. You know it. You know it and you know it. You know it. You can kid yourselves all you like. Play your little games. Oh, shout at me. Oh, that's good. You're wrong. You're wrong, guys. And Saturday night you'll see.
Sit down, lad, and get back on the in-betweeners.
Straight away they copped it. The look on Eddie Hearn's face is like, is this real?
Hearn is probably just thinking, how good am I at my job now? If this is the standard, I'm way above this. It's shocking. But I felt sorry for Haye. Haye is sitting there. Like, they should have just said, listen, pal, probably best that you don't talk today.
You don't need to speak. Why do you?
You don't need to speak. Or if you're going to speak after me. Yeah. That is just shocking. Like, talk about taking the wind out of your sails straight off.
Do we have the reaction of? We do, yeah. So we've got Eddie Hearn's reaction. Have a look.
On the way back from Liverpool, from the Bellew Haye press conference, what did you think actually of Adam Morley's speech today?
Who wants quality one? Feisty one you are!
Big in-betweeners fans, these guys.
It's like, holy shit.
No, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. But as Dave said, Haye has kind of come out with this new thing of, I've matured at whatever, 36, 37, which is always a good time to mature. Better late than never.
We were all late starters ourselves at various things.
I watched the first fight, and obviously he's in kind of, he's physically in kind of better shape than Bellew, but Bellew obviously has that kind of, he's seasoned, he's got, he's a puncher. Haye is probably a bit lighter than him, and that all counts when you get up to that kind of division, obviously. Bellew is, I think Bellew, although he finished them off well the last, obviously the Achilles injury or the calf injury, whatever happened to Haye, you could see he was on one leg, and you need your legs to throw punches. You need to drive it through your hips, So, I think it actually will be probably a decent fight.
I thought the last fight was decent.
It was a decent fight.
They're well matched, right? And they've definitely got different styles. And actually, I'm happy they're fighting again. And I wouldn't mind seeing David Haye win this fight and then be good enough in this fight to actually get into the mix in the heavyweight.
Well, that's something he has been saying that's been very interesting, because he realises that in the overall heavyweight picture, David Bellew or Tony Bellew is not a factor.
Yeah.
So he has said, if I don't win this comfortably, I'm clearly not a factor in the heavyweight division, and I'm going to retire.
And
I love that. Yeah. I love him saying, if I beat him on points, or if I beat him with like a 12th round knockdown, that's nowhere near good enough for me to be taking on Deontay Wilder or an Anthony Joshua. So I'm going to have to retire myself, which is really refreshing stuff. Or Tyson Fury.
But even you look at Bellew and you even think, imagine putting Bellew into any of those three. Yeah. There's light years between those guys, because Bellew has made the most of it. To be fair, since the Haye fight, Bellew has really milked it.
Yeah, and actually that's all right. I think like these are fights that people are happy enough to see. Right, here's what's coming up for you. We're going to talk about Connacht a little bit later on. We're running a poll at the moment. We've had a little whisper that perhaps Ron O'Gara is somebody that Connacht might be interested in sounding out, or indeed may even have already begun the process of sounding out to see if he'd come back from New Zealand for the Connacht job. And sure, why the hell wouldn't you? There's our poll at the moment. Obviously, these are you're only allowed 4 options, and we decided to go with 4 instead of anybody else. Eddie O'Sullivan at the moment topping out the lead. Ron O'Gara in 3rd place. Bernard Jackman, it's joined first. Jackman and Eddie O'Sullivan, Ron O'Gara in 3rd, and Nigel Carolan in propping up there. But maybe Carolan is actually the most realistic of the 4 contenders there. Also going to talk about Roma a little bit later on, just after 9 o'clock. Richard Chambers, who is a Roma fan and obviously a colleague of ours here, will come in and talk to us a bit about what life as a Roma fan is like. Talk about Real Liverpool, and we'll bring you through the sports pages right now.
OTB AM. In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
We've got loads of GAA news as well. Obviously, we'll talk about that with Anthony in just a little while. So the order of our newspapers this morning, I'm going to start first with the Irish Times. Liverpool ready to fight for our dreams, says Jurgen Klopp. That's the headline there. And Klopp looking for more of the same. So obviously his press conference yesterday, and a picture of Mo Salah because, well, why not? It's one of the most famous athletes in the world at the moment. Totti urges Roma fans to stay calm. A lot of measures taken by the police in Rome, banning drinking around the ground from last night. So there'll be a cordoned off area where people can't drink. And Martin O'Neill says the Steven Gerrard appointment at Rangers could benefit Celtic by maybe making it a bit more interesting again. So Celtic wouldn't be bored winning 7 leagues in a row. Celtic need Rangers. They do. They need a good Rangers.
They do, yeah. Absolutely they do. And it's getting a little bit, it is getting back to that kind of boring, like it's just, you know, once in a while they get a shock, but it's not a real massive challenge for them. And Rangers have been really poor, really, really poor. Jesus, they were desperate last week or the week before. You know, fellas saying they would look like a pub team. It's amazing the fall from grace that has been there, considering the size of the club and the history of it and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, maybe they need someone like that to kind of re-energise it. But
I think they needed to re-energise the Scottish Premier League.
Yeah.
I don't think I used to be of the view that Celtic needed a strong Rangers, but they aren't really dependent on Rangers being competitive anymore. It's not going to help them in terms of playing week in, week out against decent side. It hasn't stopped them qualifying for the Champions League group stages.
There'll be at least some more money for a TV deal. Some more. Not a whole heap more, but some more money for a TV deal. And every little helps when you're if you're fishing in like the third tier of players.
Well, you have to remember where Rangers have come from. I mean, Rangers have come from the bottom division, where they've had to basically renew the club from the very embers of the dying club that had to go its own way in the last few years. They have come up and got promotion 3 times in 4 seasons. The fact that they're second in the Scottish Premiership is actually a huge achievement. I don't think they get any credit for being able to rebuild to the point that they have. Obviously, they have a much bigger fan base than any other club in the country outside of Celtic. But they've come from the very bottom to almost the very top. It's actually not that bad a 4-year spell under Rangers. It's just that they just hate seeing Celtic do so well, and it makes everything seem worse than it actually is.
9 in a row is the record. Celtic and Rangers have both done it at various stages in their history. Celtic are currently on 7. You've got to think they're going to get to 10 and maybe beyond. It'd be a bit of a miracle for him to win a title in the 3 seasons, would it?
Yeah, I think it certainly could. Like, I mean, if you look at it now, you would say with Rangers being in, shall we say, I know what Dave is saying, but like, I mean, they're way off compared to Celtic. The reason I think that Celtic need them is just the fact of that old firm clash is still something that you say, okay, I'll watch this. You know, even if you're not necessarily into it, you'll still go. Like, I mean, you won't necessarily watch Celtic Hearts or, you know, but you'll definitely watch that.
Did you watch them this season?
I did actually, yeah.
I still haven't been interested enough. My interest has not been renewed sufficiently to
because they're no good. But if they were good, you might.
But actually, after I would kind of go, if they were as bad next year, I wouldn't bother next year. You know, because
today's evidence I'm not watching next season.
Exactly, yeah. But there just wasn't that even the same old bite that there used to be. You know, taking lumps out of each other. You know, it just didn't seem to be. Well, it was just one was far superior than the other. That was it.
Yeah. There was 2 other quick stories in the Irish Times that I just wanted to talk about. Sean Moran has a piece about Leitrim and New York, and we were running through the permutations. If New York win this, what happens? Where is the next round of the Connacht Championship? If New York win, do they come back, and does that create a bit of an issue for some of the New York lads?
Well, no, they don't come back.
Maybe we don't be talking about.
There's no issue. New York will not be playing on Irish soil,
no matter what.
No matter what. No, because
what if they went on a winning run?
Because they wouldn't have a team.
Is that actually the case?
Yes. There is no way that the New York squad and management are going to be upping sticks and heading over here for a game. It's just for at least, even if it was too much of a risk for one of them, that will not be the case. The biggest problem is for the team that have to go play them, because they will have 3 weeks. Roscommon will have 3 weeks to put together that trip. Now, 3 weeks out, trying to buy tickets, all the logistics that go with it, the accommodation in the summer, I can't imagine the expense that will be incurred. It's an absolute nightmare for the Connacht Council.
You know, it's like
I think it'd be brilliant.
Fortress Gaelic Park, and
imagine
Roscommon, and it's like, well, it's Galway or Mayo in the Connacht final in Roscommon.
And Roscommon only beat them by a point last year, or 2 years ago.
It'd be kind of like the fail of Roscommon players would be sent over and have to kind of stay with the New York players in the houses or in their apartments and stuff. You know, they'd be sent out all over the boroughs of New York. You know, I do know though for a fact that the GAA have it's probably one of the only things you'd say, but they actually have a contingency plan. Right. That if it does happen, flights and all that actually are covered.
Right.
So it doesn't fall on the Roscommon County Board.
So Croke Park picks up that.
Correct.
Or at the very least, the Connacht provincial council, which will be helped by Croke Park.
Right.
It's kind of like, the magic box that's never been opened.
Yeah.
It's safe to actually, there was nothing in there going,
Hang on.
we said we had this covered, lads.
There's some moths in here. They have the money.
Break glass in case of emergency, which is exactly what would happen if you were Quinn.
Just some Garth Brooks tickets.
Imagine what they did. Like, I didn't realise Jamie Clark and stuff are playing. I didn't realise that.
Oh, there was a massive gamble on New York. So New York came down from about 6-1 they were touching odds on at one point, and they're gone back out now. But there was a massive gamble about 2 months ago. Everybody got word Jamie Clark is playing. He's going to kick 112.
Yeah,
and it's Leitrim, and they're not very good. And so none of us got on, obviously, at that stage.
Oh, of course not. No.
But
are you laying the bet now?
And I don't know. I think that like Leitrim forewarned, forearmed, all that kind of stuff. Like it's not like.
Oh, I think it's a great chance.
It's hard to know. Like 2 years ago, Roscommon got out of there by the skin of their teeth. Yeah. Last year, there was a lot of talk for New York against Sligo. People were really bigging up their chances. And
they were ahead in the second half.
Yeah, but I was listening to the game, and Sligo, with 10 minutes gone in the second half, they just put the foot down and they pulled away. And it was a really professional performance from Sligo to get the job done at the end. This time around, though, against a Leitrim team that's on a low ebb after the league, and suddenly New York have that forward. The guy who could easily just win the game on his own.
And Tom Caniff.
Exactly.
But a forward who takes at least 2 Leitrim defenders out of the game.
Yeah.
It's not like a guy, he's okay, he's good, like say Mulligan, who was playing with London or whatever, you'd say, okay, we'll match up 1-on-1. He takes at least 2. Like, he takes thinking. If you're the Leitrim management, you're saying, okay, how do we look after
He's in the
this
peak of his powers.
Absolutely, he is. And he's that type of player. Like, he has skint serious defences on his own before, playing up front on his own.
Yeah.
Do you remember a couple of years ago, Armagh literally, I think, played him inside on his own against Donegal, up against 2 or 3 players, and they just said, listen, we'll just try to get good ball into you. That's the potential he has. Now, you obviously have to win enough ball to get it into him. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a serious opportunity.
I'll be listening to the live radio feed on local radio this Saturday evening. I remember I was coming back. It would be Shannonside. I remember listening to the Sligo game when I was coming back from a Premier League match for Newstock last Sunday. I was listening in Stansted Airport. It would have been Northern Sound. It would have been Shannonside. Maybe Leitrim isn't Shannonside. Is it Ocean FM maybe?
Ocean's more Donegal Sligo.
Right. Sure. Tommy says it's Shannonside, so there you go.
There you go.
Will it be Willie Hegarty or is he just Roscommon?
It'll be both. I mean, you're not going to turn that in that trip. It's like, I'm going to do the Roscommon game. They're playing Sligo. They're playing New York this year. I also do the Leitrim games.
Yeah. I think it'd be worthwhile going over there at short notice just to see the upset.
Johnny Ward is heading over. He might be one of those people who are on that at a slightly bigger price.
Might be.
Yeah.
He was in with us this week, and he was saying the customs interview is going to be interesting. What are you going over for, sir? Well, I have a massive bet on New York to beat Leitrim in the championship. I just want to make sure that it's going to be all right. Like, it's not legal. It's fine. Yeah. Right. So let's move on to the Irish Independent. Right. So Jackson and Olding for Sale, and that's Sale Sharks as opposed to, the pun on words there. But they're saying that the world's tiniest violin is playing for Paddy Jackson, who is only going to be earning 200 grand sterling, which is about 227,000 at Sale, while Stuart Olding is also facing some kind of pay cut as well. I'm very surprised that any club has decided to rush into this at this point and take the leap and sign these players now. I understand the need for you want to get your players in and make sure everybody knows you have them, but like if this is a 2 or 3 year deal, then wait until the end of the summer, wait until they're desperate and offer them far less money, and then also it's further from the furore around the trial. Like, give it as much of a distance as you possibly can. Sale making this decision and this announcement, it hasn't been fully announced yet, but they're expected to announce it at the end of the season. It's like it's right there in everybody's media feed. It's the type of thing that will come up.
Yeah, I'd say it was a situation of there was lots of demand.
I think that's the case. Get them before somebody else gets them.
I don't think there's lots of demand for them.
Well, we don't know.
I think that the agents are trying to tell us there's lots of demand.
Once the season is over, demand will increase. And Sale, who are unable to make the playoffs for the Premiership, as things stand at the moment, are certainly unlikely to get into the playoffs. They're probably already looking at doing their business for next season, and I would say they feel that once the curtain comes down on this season, that there is going to be demand. So we might as well get this bit of business done now.
I had heard, listen, rumours abound. I had heard that Exeter had already kind of signed contracts with them, and then there was obviously people were saying they potentially will go to France to get further away from geographical sense. I think they were saying the kind of main man in Sale is a kind of a turnaround specialist. He had Cipriani in before, and he had a couple of fellas who would seem to be a little bit on the edge, and he kind of has given them chances to kind of redeem themselves. So, I just think it's a demand thing, Ger. Honestly, I think that people will decide that, look, these two guys are potential, have played for Ireland, they're internationals, and we're going to pick them up. I'm surprised at the wage bill. I thought there'd be knockdown, but I think that smacks then of demand too, that obviously these guys aren't even taking much of a hit. Now obviously it's just you don't know if it's 100% true, but I think time is a healer, and I think people will just say, listen, although you don't want to leave it too long, I think, what is it, 4 weeks now, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, in this current times, that's probably long enough, because I think, as Dave says, I think the people are going to be coming out of woodwork, be it French clubs, Italian clubs,
especially for Jackson. Like, international class 10s are a prize commodity out there, regardless of their history. And obviously Jackson's carrying an awful lot of baggage wherever he goes. But just ask Ulster the difficulties with trying to find an international class fly half. So they've got major issues in that regard at the moment.
I was looking up the Premiership table. Sale are currently 7th on 54 points, and they're 2 points behind Gloucester and 4 points behind Leicester. The top 6 automatically qualify for the Champions Cup. So if they qualify for the Champions Cup, and say Ulster get qualify for the Champions Cup, and then Jackson Holding are back next year at Ravenhill, it's definitely a situation that I'm sure everybody would have preferred to wait a while before that happens.
Well, there are several ifs in that conundrum you've just put together there, Gerrard.
Huge ifs,
and that's if they're actually played by Sale, because I would think the wise decision would be, why don't we just leave the two boys in Manchester for that weekend, and let's see if we can get the job done without them.
All right, let's move on. So the other stories on the back of the Irish Independent were about Ian Henderson perhaps being in doubt for the tour to Australia. Not the worst thing if Ian Henderson has a bit of time off after a long time on the road. So moving on to The Guardian, King Kaler. This is Kaler Navas. Heroics come to the rescue for Real Madrid as Benzema books place in third successive final. We'll talk a bit more about that game in a couple of minutes' time. And Date with Destiny, Liverpool will fight for our dreams, says wary Klopp. Jurgen Klopp wary because his assistant is apparently being linked back in Bosnia with the Arsenal gig. And it was the same Bosnian media outlet that broke the news that Klopp was also going to be joining Liverpool, so they have form for that story. And then finally for me, The Examiner, tunnel vision, let's fight for our dreams, urges Klopp. And that's a bunch of very young-looking Liverpool players on their way to the game this evening on the back. The schedule may be a bit mad, but format is a crazy kind of good. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well when we get to our more GAA stories. What have you got for us, Anthony?
Yeah, just some more stuff, Ger, really about the Roma fans and the Liverpool fans. Police ready to hold fans until 1 a.m. in the Irish edition of the Times. It seems a bit excessive. 2.5 hours after the game finishes, they're going to be held back for.
I guess whatever it takes, isn't it?
Yeah, the Sean Cox thing is obviously it has been really, to be in Dunboyne. The people around there obviously heard it straight away. The talk, was just devastation, obviously, around the place. And it's great to see what Liverpool have done, and indeed what Roma have done. But it's obviously a very, very tough situation. But yeah. Who knows? Hopefully, just it can go off without any kind of major events going on. Again, just saying in the Times, Jackson could sign for Sale. Just what you said. Ulster, they're saying maybe forced to wait for their new coach due to a Scottish contract. Yeah,
the Scots are pissed off because this news came out before a deal had been finalised. That's the undercurrent there, and it's like, no, we're going to put you on gardening leave now until January.
Yeah.
Screw you, Ulster, and screw you, IRFU. That'd be a bit annoying, wouldn't it? No, we found this guy.
Writing the season off.
Definitely going to have him here for the start of the season, maybe.
Yeah, so I think they'll probably just end up buying him out of the contract, I'd say.
Like, money solves all those problems, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's what it'll take, but because they've come out so early, Ulster, and they've just jacked up the price of any compensation that's going to have to be paid.
Yeah, they've got to get it done if they're going to have any kind of sense of stability, and if you're going to try and convince some 10s to go north from Dublin then it's like, well, who's my coach? That guy that you announced are not going to have until January, by which stage effectively the Champions Cup is gone for another season, unless your stand-in manager or coach is brilliant to the point where, well, did you need the other guy? Like,
no. Makes a difference.
That's not ideal.
No. Peter Canavan as well in the Times saying that he wouldn't, he's not that pushed about taking over the intercam. No one is. It's kind of, it reminds me of the Boylan era where everyone's like, oh no, I wouldn't want to, definitely don't want to manage Meath. And, Hart is obviously there. He's there for, I don't know how long now. Is he 13, 14?
2003 was his, we won it in his first year, didn't he?
He's over 15.
Won the minors and under 21s before that.
Yeah.
Canavan wants to be the guy after the guy.
Yeah, that's a long time away.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the way to do it.
Unless, though, it's been so long, it's kind of like the guy after Wenger is actually the right time to be there, because it's been a while since Tyrone have been properly relevant. I mean, last year they reached the All-Ireland semi-final, but they get blitzed to the point where you don't think they're realistic contenders. And so there's a nucleus of a good team, and they clearly, it seems, need a new voice. So, and you get Peter next season.
They have won back-to-back Ulster titles, which is not easily done. They were contenders in everybody's mind until 15 minutes into the All-Ireland semi-final last year.
About 10 minutes.
Plenty of people were tipping them to win an All-Ireland over the course of the last season. And they're a Division 1 team. It's not like Tyrone are going backwards right now.
No, but you don't really feel like coming in after Mickey Hart now is coming in after Mickey Hart in, say, 2010,
in 09.
2011.
No, it's not. But they are still a force. They're in the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah. So it's a great time to get the job.
Well, actually, in the Irish News, Owen Mulligan is talking in the Irish News, and he says that the current Tyrone forwards would not get into the All-Ireland winning team. So
that's because there's only one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But actually, you know what? I watched him closely this year during the league, and I like what he's doing, Hart. He's brought O'Neill in as obviously a kind of a forwards guru, Stephen O'Neill, and he's brought him in to try and obviously expand, because listen, the chastening experience in Croke Park last year by Dublin was just, you could just see that was soul destroying for him. Colin Kavanagh was the only one who was trying to get them going, the only one. He was roaring and shouting at them. I don't know if we did that game, but he was roaring and shouting at them. He was actually pleading with them to lift it, and they were just so shell-shocked by it. And I think obviously Hart realises that when you go into Croke Park, i.e. one eye on the Super 8, you cannot have a situation where you have 13 or 12 fellas behind the ball. You have to get a bit more expansive. And actually, to be fair, I think he's unearthed a couple of decent forwards. Your man Brennan is a good young forward. And the way, the style that they're playing now, I think is helping them. And against Donegal, I was really impressed. And even against Dublin in the first half, I was impressed until Dublin fixed things. So I think they'll have a big say this year, actually. I think they really will. I think they're a decent team again.
That first forward line, 10 was Dewar, 11 was Brian McGuigan, 12 was Carolan, 13 was Enda McGinley, 14 was Peter Canavan, and 15 was Owen Mulligan. So that's even before Stephen O'Neill comes into the team.
That's not bad.
No.
The 05 forward lineup was sensational, because you throw Stephen O'Neill in there. In 08, Sean Kavanagh was named at 14, and you had Ryan Mellon in that team, you had Martin Penrose. They wouldn't be as Tommy McGuigan, they wouldn't be as prolific as the 05 lineup. And obviously, 3-8 Canavan's still somewhere close to his peak. But he's probably right that they don't get the credit they deserve as a forward line and as a team. But he's definitely right in saying that the current forward line wouldn't get into that, in particularly 03 or 05. But
it's not referred to as one of the all-time. It's not referred to as one of the all-time great forward lines, but it really is.
It's a seriously impressive forward line. It really is, because you had height, you've a bit of power, you've got guile, you've got fellas who can score, you've got a bit of everything there.
And Peter Canavan.
Exactly. And then you've got him just leading everywhere. But McGuigan and the likes of that, and Dewar and different guys, they unearthed some unbelievable players. And guys, I suppose they don't really get it because they were the first real team to kind of, I suppose, that were labelled this defensive kind of team. You know, and so there wasn't a real feeling that, it's this perception is reality. There wasn't a real feeling, that they're really a forward unit. Whereas they actually, they were. And
they probably revolutionised how forwards also defend. Yeah. They were also a forward bunch who could tackle and win their own ball and press.
At his absolute peak, for me, Stephen O'Neill is as good as any forward that's played the game in the last 30 years when he was at his best in 05. Those points he'd kick were like, but there's 4 or 5 metres between him and the end line.
Yeah.
Like an angle that
Left
you would
foot and
seem
right
to
foot.
be at both feet.
Yeah.
Absolutely impossible to score from where he is, and he used to do it routinely.
But he also, because actually, I only marked him once, and he was practically injured. It was the time we beat them in 07, and he came on, and actually, I think Darren Fay had to go off, so I went back in full back. Thanks for that. And O'Neill came on, but I remember he got a ball out in front of me, and I kind of went up behind. Like, I mean, obviously I thought he was going to swing around his right foot, but he dummy soloed and just spun it away from me and clipped like outside of his left boot, and it just went wide. And I just said, "Oh, thank God this guy hasn't been on from the start."
Well, obviously you did such a number on him that it forced him into retirement.
No, definitely wasn't that.
That was his last match before he decided to call it quits, and then of course came back for the All-Ireland final the following year. But it was Moylesy that Stephen O'Neill thought, I'm not up to this anymore. He
was fast, he was deceptively quick.
Yeah.
And he was a big guy.
Yeah.
You know, and he could really play it anyway with you. Like, he could hold you off, he was physically strong.
Yeah.
But he was a very smart individual, and he was a smart player, you could see that. And I think this idea where, I don't know if you saw the Dublin game, but they were doing an awful lot of this no-look passes where they're going one way, you know, they're going, say, left to right. And for all attempts and purposes, it looks like they're going to put the ball down into the right-hand corner, but then they switch it. That was a real O'Neill thing to do, you know, to completely catch a full back line. So in other words, everyone's looking one way, and then the ball gets diagonally pressed to the other way.
Yeah.
So I think he's, and to be fair, I think there was a major falling out between him and Hart back in the day. So obviously they've gelled that and they've mended that. So yeah, I think Tyrone will take some stopping this year.
Do you buy the lines that everybody's coming out with about the Dubs? Mickey Hart was peddling it yesterday that sure, their time is up, and Brian Sheehan saying that they won't be hungry.
Yeah, Brian Sheehan saying winning All Ireland breeds complacency, and when it comes down to the crunch in an All Ireland semi or a final this year, will that hunger still be there for Dublin? To which I said to Moyles earlier, well, it didn't seem to, they had no issue winning their second All Ireland or the third or the fifth in 7 years or the 5 leagues in 6 years. There doesn't seem to be any diminishing of the hunger.
It's one game against Donegal. That's it. That is stopping them from like having won everything.
Yeah,
forever.
It is. And every year there's at least one, if not two, new young guys that come into the team. It just shows you how competitive the squad is. You can't be complacent, because if you want to play for them, like Mayo can be complacent from January to July, because 8, 9 out of the starting 15 know that no matter how much they stink the joint out in the winter and spring, if they show themselves to be anything close to their best come June, they're going to get back into the team. That does not happen if you're playing for Dublin.
Yeah.
No, and the big, like, we were chatting about it, Dave and I, and the complacency thing, it just doesn't happen. You look at even during the league, I think they came back from down in Galway, where they easily could have just said, we've already qualified, we'll just take this beating.
Yeah.
And they didn't. They rallied back, I think, to either level or win. I think they drew that game. So even in, shall we say, a second-rate kind of league game,
when you could phone it in, when other teams would phone it in, then they'd be excused for it.
But part of it's pride, the other part of it is I'm actually not going to start for the championship if I don't get the finger out for the next 20 minutes.
Correct.
What have you got for us?
You raised the post there,
No,
Moyles.
just again, more stuff about obviously the game tonight, conquerors of Rome, Liverpool then Roma's bid to rule Europe. Pretty, I don't know, can they turn it around? Can Roma turn it around? Obviously they 3-0 against Barcelona. The second day, have they the ability to do it again?
I mean, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing you've ever seen if Roma go through tonight.
Stranger things have definitely happened in football, but
and recently enough
is in the quarter-final, as in what Barcelona did to Paris Saint-Germain last season, what Juve almost managed to achieve at the Bernabeu just a few short weeks ago.
Yeah.
What Liverpool did a few years back, remember, to win it? So the question
was that
is,
Istanbul, was it? Was that?
Yeah, I think so, something like that.
That was the 5th time they'd won it, was it?
You never hear about that, do you?
But the question, like you
never hear about the new camp.
The comment you made there about a young-looking Liverpool side, if Roma score and score early, what exactly happens there? Because they have this freshness about them. They have this kind of, they're just relatively, it's young, it's brash, it's just going for it. If the old squeeze comes on, because 5-0 up and then to concede those two later on, that has to be
somewhere there. Definitely. And also their assistant coach has walked out this week. Like, it's a bunch of weird things have happened. The 2 goals, the assistant coach It's going to be a very intimidating atmosphere.
It will be a hostile atmosphere, but it's very difficult to envisage a 90-minute spell where that Liverpool team failed to score against that Roma team. And I think one goal will do it. I'll fly through my papers. The Herald this morning, John Giles exclusive. Poole could do without the Bivac drama. The Sheehan comments there. Sheehan queries Dublin's drive. The Kerry mind games begin very early for that. And Klopp wants brave hearts. Liverpool are ready for these tests, says the Anfield chief Jurgen. The Mirror this morning, Gladiators, we are ready. I guess you probably need to say that in a Scottish accent, do you? Most of our viewers or listeners probably wouldn't get that particular reference. Yeah. Gladiators, we are ready. What was your man's name?
Robert,
have you any idea what I'm talking about?
William Wallace.
Oh, the dude in the American football refereeing costume in the old Gladiators program on ITV.
No clue whatsoever.
What?
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
well, that's what I think it is.
Braveheart there.
I woke up with 2 channels. I grew up with 2 channels.
Yeah.
I'm not going back to the 1980s here, Ger. This is like round about 1990s.
Oh, yeah,
John Fashanu and Ulrika Johnson.
Oh, 2 channels, Dave.
God, you really were neglected as a kid. Anyway, he says they're ready. The Gladiators heading into the Coliseum that will be the Stadio Olimpico this evening. The Sun Sport this morning, Rome is where the heart is. Klopp says dream big. They want to go out and win that game. Martin O'Neill, interestingly, saying we will not be waiting on Liam Kelly. If he wants to play for Ireland, he has to be the person to make the first move. And Kevin Walsh having another go at what he calls lazy pundits. And I think he's pretty much talking to Sunday Game journalists there and how they cover.
What
describing Galway as being a defensive team with playing with a lot of negativity, and players can't possibly enjoy themselves playing within that system.
Is that what they've said? I haven't seen
that. Has been the general narrative over the last few weeks.
You were on one of those. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, well, when I throw a blanket over Sunday Game pundits, I'm throwing it over him as well.
Okay, was the strict instructions here? By the way, anytime you talk about Galway, defensive. Here's your script.
I think my comments were forgotten about. I think it was, I have to say, some of the comments about them, because I actually thought they were really, really impressive. And he has built a serious team. This is his 4th year. They are massive game obviously against Mayo, but they have done everything that he needs to do. They got rid of a lot of players, and that was a real big thing. There's a lot of fellas saying, oh, why has he dropped this? He got rid of a lot of messing going on, and he brought these guys back on his terms, and everything is on his terms, it seems.
Yeah.
So they're going to be...
and they've evolved year on year. They've got better.
I do think it only works if you're winning. Like the likes of a Sean Armstrong will only buy into this system if they're winning matches and they're progressing and they've chances of playing in the Super 8s, because it doesn't really suit someone of his skill set, for example. But if you're...
To work hard and challenge and be defensive when you're out of possession of the ball. Come on, that's exactly what every team has to do.
But it is working.
I'm not saying that's not what every team has to do. I'm saying the only way certain guys will buy into it, guys who've been through various regimes over the last 10 years, is if it's successful and you're winning.
I think that those players are the ones
the infighting will start quickly enough if they don't win.
Most of all because they've been through losing campaign after losing campaign after losing campaign.
Well, it is tricky, and one thing I say, so you have, certainly you would have guys, and I'm not privy to it, but you would, looking from the outside in, you would have fellas who would have had, there's been plenty of managers, right? So there's probably a lot of player power down there. We don't like the way this is going on, we like the way this. So Walsh went in, from what I can see, is he went in and said, okay, we'll let it, year 1, see how it is. But then year 2 or 3, remember, there was lots of people saying, why is he gone? Why is that guy gone? Guys weren't playing, everything else. And they have all come back into the fold. So it has been, listen, this is where the tram lines are. This is where we're going to do this. You're either in it or you're not. And if you're not, that's fine. But you're going to do it under my terms. And I agree with you. But you can't get the success, I believe, without having that set up first. Because if you're beholden to a bunch of people, you're going absolutely nowhere. You're just going to be the next guy on the conveyor belt. So he has to, much like Jim Gavin, you have to go in and stamp your authority and say,
oh, it's your way or the highway. There's no there's no alternative. Lastly from me, no time for losers. This is the Irish Daily Star this morning. More reference to Jurgen Klopp on the pre-match press conference yesterday. Gerrard, Rangers contact positive. He did admit on BT Sport last night. He was covering the game, the Real Bayern game, and he said, he has held talks with them, and those talks will resume on Thursday. And then the agony and the ecstasy, Real 2, Bayern Munich 2. Brilliant game at the Bernabeu last night, decided by a goalkeeping howler that we probably haven't seen for the best part of 10 or 15 years. Outfoxed by the back pass rule.
Class, wasn't it?
Oh, it was unbelievable.
We were looking at his date of birth this morning. He was 4 when the back pass rule was brought into the game, and yet
he's never lived with anything other than that. And Manuel Neuer is like generally considered to be pretty good at that kind of stuff, right?
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Like, as in, he would have been learning from somebody who totally understands it in training every day. It's like, we get the ball, we pass it around. No?
Yeah, it's just, everything just got to him in that one moment.
Did he think it came from one of his own players? Did he think he would have had to maybe slide in? I think he thought he was going to have to slide in on Benzema and actually make a save. And then he realised actually Benzema's a bit slower than I thought.
I think you're being very generous to him there. Incredibly generous.
But, he was kind of in that frame and then he was like, oh, I have to readjust. And he was already in some kind of a sliding motion and he just couldn't get his legs organised.
Just handle it and take the Ronaldo free kick. Chances are Ronaldo's going to balloon it over the crossbar.
Yeah, but he wasn't thinking straight. This kind of stuff was not going through his mind at that moment. He just forgot it was a back pass until the last possible moment, and in a bit to readjust his body, the whole thing just imploded.
But isn't it amazing? It's the old saying, the Tyson saying, everyone has a plan. You're there at half time, you go through everything.
Yeah. And it's going really well, we're back in this, come on.
You're probably not even sat down as a coach. What just happened there?
And you're out because of it. It's just an awful mistake.
But some amount of howlers, to be fair to Bayern, even in the first, if you take those howlers out of it.
I know, yeah, because I actually didn't think Bayern this season were as good as they have been, but it turns out they were really good. There's just a few.
Well, as Owen Hargreaves said on BT Sport last night, if you take all of Bayern's mistakes over the two legs out of it, they'd have gone through.
Yeah,
good point. He's a genius. Right, so we just want to talk a little bit about this. Aaron Bulger has been ripping up trees for Shamrock Rovers over the last while, despite the fact the team haven't been doing well. Finally, the whole team clicked and everybody else is beginning to pay a bit of attention to it. Dan McDonald has been on the Aaron Bulger train for ages, and here he is on last night's show talking about his future prospects.
And there's a young kid in midfield called Aaron Bulger. He's 18 years old. He's doing his leaving cert this year. I think he's one of the few people who probably be shorter than Wes Houlihan, but he's a midfielder who can play, he can pass, he can tackle. He was up against 3 senior pros last night. League winners with Cork, and he bossed them. And
has he been a first teamer over the last?
He was involved last year. He was with the Irish under-17s in the European Championships last year. He's with the Irish under-8 set-up at the moment too, but he's with Rovers. He's with Rovers and doing his leaving cert through Ashfield College, a sort of a deal that Rovers have with them, the private secondary schools. So he's training full-time in the morning.
Right.
Doing his studying in the afternoons. This guy's definitely going to be a player if he just keeps on an upward curve, and it's a name I'm pretty sure we'll be talking about in the future in this segment and other ones, I'd say.
Yeah, as in not just the League of Ireland segment, so potentially a move across channel. So just to tell you a little bit more about what Stephen Bradley thinks about him, he's a nasty little fucker, according to Stephen Bradley, his manager, in the post-match press conference after the Cork game. But he said it as only an Irishman could, with glowing admiration for him.
With affection.
Yeah, so he's an 18-year-old who's sticking his foot in, and also a diminutive midfielder who's willing to kick the opposition whenever they need to be kicked, who can also control the game with his passing. It's like...
He reminds me very much of Marco Verratti.
John Giles.
He has that edge to him. He'll kick you in the back of the calf if you're not looking, if the referee's not looking. He loves a 50-50 challenge, but he's got the skills. He can control the game. He can pass the ball. He can keep the ball. It's a good guy to have in your team, especially at that age. I mean, you would imagine the potential for him to improve. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, with Wes obviously bowing out in the last 7 days, don't think he can get on this train now and start bigging him up for the rest of his life. Right. Hopefully not for him.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to talk rugby now because the Connacht job has come up in the last 24 hours, and the Ulster coach situation is a little bit clearer, although we're still not quite sure when McFarlane is going to actually arrive. But in terms of the available names for this, Dave, why would Connacht not be trying to convince the IRFU to pay for Ronan O'Gara or somebody of that ilk to come? Why do they have to go fishing around for names in the Southern Hemisphere that we don't know and who don't fully understand the culture?
Well, they don't have to do that. They will be going for the guy that they think... Well, if you're sitting in that Connacht boardroom, you're coming up with a shortlist, and I assume you're starting at the very top. And then you're trying to mirror that and match that to the income available, the revenues available to actually pay for this guy, whoever it might be. So if you're thinking of the best possible guys to take this job, certainly Ronan O'Gara would be on the list, wouldn't it? Like if you're looking to give it to an assistant coach who's on an upward trajectory and has what you would appear to have a really bright future out of him. Now, whether or not you can afford that, that's where the RFU come in. I don't think Kieran Keane would have been on as much as Pat Lam would have been, for example, certainly in his last year or two.
And you would assume that somebody like Ronan O'Gara is going to bring massive corporate support. Like suddenly everybody wants to see what's happening there because O'Gara is in charge.
It would work wonders on and off the field, no question about it. We talked about this last week when we were discussing the vacancy that's now at Ulster. Well, it was a vacancy when we talked about it last week. It now seems to have been filled by McFarlane. But that it was the worst possible time, we put this to Stephen Ferris, to be looking for a new head coach in the April before a World Cup year, because nobody's really going to want to make their move until after the World Cup. All the top international head coaches, they're obviously firmly ensconced until the World Cup is done in Japan, and a lot of the club coaches of other clubs are looking at some vacancies at international jobs that might come up for availability once the World Cup is done. But O'Gara doesn't really fall into either of those camps. Now, is he going to up sticks and leave Crusaders after one season? I'd be surprised.
Maybe.
Like if he's down there to try and gain the experience of a different culture and a different way of doing things and arguably the best coaches in the world, does he want to leave that after a year?
Ideally, you'd have a full season or 2 full seasons, but opportunities like this might not necessarily come around.
Is the Connacht job an attractive one from a Ronan O'Gara point of view?
I think it is, and I'll tell you why, because I think that the Munster job has a very young coach in situ at the moment, and the South Africa job has... so if you're Van Gran, you're like, well, my next job is going to be hopefully international rugby or one of the massive Super Rugby franchises. But actually, the Munster job is just as good as any of those Super Rugby franchises. So there's in place a coaching ticket in Munster that doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere for quite a while. The Ireland situation is going to be pretty interesting after the World Cup. David Nucifora is on the record as saying that only coaches within the Irish system are going to be considered for the Irish international coaching job, which means that there are 2 candidates for that, Stuart Lancaster and Andy Farrell at the moment. Like if Ronan O'Gara wants to be part of that ticket at some point, come back, do Ireland, do Connacht all the way up until the World Cup, and then after that you could be part of the Ireland coaching ticket alongside a Lancaster or a Farrell. Like you're a professional coach, you're thinking, you have to think 1 step / 2 steps ahead and go, well, how do I get myself into a situation where I get back into the Irish system at some point?
Well, I would say if that is what is in O'Gara's mind, we're speculating as to what might be in his mind, but then Connacht do not need Ronan O'Gara then. Connacht need a guy who's going to be able to come in, lay the foundation, lay out a roadmap of 3, 4, 5 years in duration, pretty much what Pat Lam did, convince them that your vision is the way to go. I think someone who's just coming in for a couple of years,
well, maybe it's
definitely
the
not
Ireland
what
job
Connacht need.
after Farrell / Lancaster get it.
So you're talking 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now. I think what the prospective new head coach for Connacht will have learned from this Kieran Keane situation is that you need to be more than just the head coach in Connacht. You have to be able to play the game off the field as well. There is a feeling out west that he didn't really interact with the support enough, didn't interact with the club game in the Connacht counties enough, and that would have been put in even more stark contrast when you compared it to the way Pat Lam behaved when he was over there, constantly referring to all the counties by name, constantly referring about how important it was to get into the schools, get into the clubs, talking to fans, meeting fans before and after games. I mean, he was the ideal head coach to try and get a province that had never really won anything to buy into everything together on and off the field. Kieran Keane just wanted to win matches as the head coach. He had no interest in anything else that went on. And I think this is down to far more than just results, because his first season is actually better than Pat Lam's first season was. And it's...
Pat Lam was coming off a relatively low base. Kieran Keane's coming off a team that 2 seasons ago were the league champions. So it's not really fair. It's not like a
he inherited a team that had an absolutely awful season last season.
Everybody was injured. Everybody was injured.
The injury profile was a bit better this season.
Way better. And that's one of the things that they held against him, was like, well, hang on a second, you had all these really good players available. Like, that Connacht squad was way better than the one that Lam inherited. You had a bunch of players who just played for Ireland in the Chicago tests. Like, they had more players in that game than they've had playing for Ireland at the same time in ages. The Connacht job, I think, is a really good job.
But I think, though, it's a tough job. It kind of goes back to the Mkhitaryan thing. It's a tough job to come in after Lam, purely for the reasons, as Dave has spoken about, which is not necessarily what you're doing on the field, but what you're doing off the field. Like Lam, this whole idea of culture, but Lamb most definitely generated that. And for an outsider to generate that, and you could see by the people even around there and the supporters and the players, they really latched onto that, you know. So you had the Elwood factor, you had him coming in then, and you had all of that kind of feeling of, well, it's probably a bit of an underdog kind of, you know, it's us against them type thing. Now all of a sudden they're up there, and Keane is in a situation where he was saying, well, I want to put my stamp on the team. A year isn't enough to do it. I think it's pretty harsh on him, but obviously
so do I.
There's feeling down there that he isn't the man for the job, and maybe it's the player power thing again. The players have just said, no, we were very comfortable with this type of an individual who maybe massaged us, got us into that kind of right frame of mind, and yet we're being completely torn into this other extreme, which is maybe, as you say, results driven. We're going to try a different method. We're not necessarily going to really reach out to the supporters, etc., etc. We're just going to be very, very professional about it, and maybe they just weren't ready for that yet.
But the Connacht hierarchy can't have been surprised by that. Like, they did an awful lot of research into Kieran Keane. They knew exactly the type of coach and the type of personality they were bringing in. He was described as the perfect fit for this job when they recruited him.
They obviously didn't do enough research. Like, so it doesn't reflect well on them either that it turned out his character was a really bad fit for the job that they need.
Well, what I would say is, if we do the research in that and we get a guy like him in, well, then you better make sure he has a number 2 and a number 3 who are going to be out, going to the schools and visiting around and ticking the boxes with the players and making sure that the players feel okay and saying, listen, you know, he has the same desire as Lamb has, but it's in a different way. Obviously, his backroom team, I don't necessarily know, but you would infer that there was obviously a disconnect there, big time. Because after 12 months, it's just not long enough to put your stamp on anything.
It seems that way. And so he didn't pick the backroom team. You inherit the backroom team in these jobs. So Van Graan didn't pick his backroom team in Munster either, but like, it turns out that it seems like they're getting on well enough. At least when I think Van Graan can hire his own defensive coach, or they're like, so Nienaber came.
He has hired his own coach, Freire,
so there's at least one sidekick that you get. I don't know if Connacht do that, but
there was a difference in that Erasmus, obviously, we knew for months that Erasmus was on his way out, and he certainly laid the foundations for Van Graan to come in. There was a handover period. They managed that period of uncertainty as best they possibly could, where Kieran Keane didn't really have that. But one season is incredibly harsh on him now to be basically run out of the place after a very disappointing campaign, but one in which they scored more tries, conceded fewer tries, beat Leinster, Munster and Ulster at home in the same season, which has not happened in my memory since the Celtic League and Pro 12, Pro 14, whatever guys you put on it, has come into being. So there were some positives, and I think at times you could certainly see that things were now starting to turn around for them, but he won't be the man given the opportunity to build on that.
I think it's amazing, again, it's that kind of stuff that you do off the pitch, and Lamb was obviously brilliant at it. Like, I mean, I'd say if you were to ask most people on the street who's the current Connacht coach, they knew who Pat Lamb was. You know, a lot of people say, oh yeah, that guy, you know, because there was this mythical kind of nearly presence about him. But I think what Dave says about, well, what's actually right for Connacht is the thing. And that's why the O'Gara question. They have to actually sit down now and say, listen, what is right for us for the next 4 to 5 years? Because we need to. Very quickly they could find themselves that they just start to really go back down rather than being the force that they are. And they need to start adding the layers on. Is O'Gara then, like, I mean, most of what you were speaking about was good for O'Gara, not necessarily good for Connacht.
Yeah,
you know?
I think he will be good for Connacht though, because he is that kind of messianic figure that people will immediately rally behind. There will be, like, the world's media will pay attention to what Connacht do for a period of time. Yeah, and
but they could also pay attention to it in a negative way. You know,
if it goes badly.
And then what would that do? Rather than, you know, I think the Lamb thing, Lamb wasn't that necessarily high profile, but he brought with it, as I say, so much else. And I still don't think they're at that kind of Leinster, Munster level where they need to, keep improving that and keep generating.
They absolutely do. Other potential candidates, like Nigel Carolan has been part of that setup and is potentially ready to take that job, and so could easily get it. Pardon me. Bernard Jackman obviously has a difficult job on his hands in Wales and played out there, knows exactly what the scenario is, had a very impressive track record at Grenoble for a period of time. Is it time to get him back into the Irish system?
It's an interesting one. There would be some amongst the press corps in Newport that would like to see the back of Bernard. again, I think almost like Kieran Keane, it would be harsh. He has to start from an incredibly low base at Sydney Parade, because it's not Sydney Parade, Rodney Parade, not the dart station, Rodney Parade.
I was saying, is he living out there? That's a long trek for him.
And he's had to rip it up at the seams and build again with Dragons. And I don't think he would want to leave after one season. But if a province you've played for, your first head coaching job within Ireland comes calling after the apprenticeship you've served in Grenoble and then in Newport, maybe that's too difficult to turn down. I don't know if he would be on the RFU and Connacht Rugby's radar. We keep having to remind ourselves that anything that Connacht want to do has to be rubber stamped by the RFU. So that's
somebody suggesting Jerry Flannery on the tweets. Obviously, another former Connacht player, clearly doing brilliantly at the moment with Munster, and you can see him embedded in Munster's culture. And why the hell would he leave when they're at European Champions Cup semi-final level? But equally, the opportunity to be the number one is very appealing to people.
I think the culture thing, though, is a big thing, and I think the former Connacht thing has to resonate. I think even with the O'Gara thing or like a Flannery thing, Connacht have done so much work over the last 7 to 8, say 10 years to try and make themselves an entity within the four, and they're trying to bring everything around that this is Connacht. It's about Leitrim and this kind of idea. That if you bring in someone who's steeped in Munster history or Leinster history, and is seen as a Leinster or Munster person, well then I think that actually drags away from it.
You dilute it a little.
I think it does. Now, not massively in the professional era, but I think it just does enough. And you don't need that. They don't need that. They need everything kind of nearly playing on for themselves, that are adding things rather than taking away. So is the Jackman thing? Potentially.
Two back-to-back there about, the first one was from Digger talking about how it's a shoe in the hole for the Irish lads, that it's going to be another assistant coach in the Southern Hemisphere who no one's heard of. I mean, it worked out when no one had really heard of Joe Schmidt. It worked out when no one had really heard of Michael Cheika. So there is definitely value to be had in shopping globally. We only put the Irish options up this morning just to show that there are Irish options there. We haven't even mentioned Eddie O'Sullivan yet. You have to feel like the ship has sailed in terms of Eddie's relationship with the IRFU. And actually, he's a brilliant rugby pundit, and the game would not necessarily be better for having lost his voice in the media, but equally you can see how it would appeal to him.
Yeah, even if it's not necessarily Eddie being a head coach, whether there's a director of rugby role there maybe, or something a little more statesman-like, where Eddie can be there in a consultancy capacity, he can oversee things, and you bring in a younger head coach to work underneath him. One other question I'd have about the Connacht situation is, did John Muldoon know that Kieran Keane was going to be handed his P45 when he decided that upon retirement he was going to go into coaching?
Did Dan McFarlane know? Is the Ulster job better than the Connacht job?
I would think so.
Why?
Resources, better stadium, bigger fan base, better pedigree,
and not a very
better weather.
Is it better?
Probably not. Marginally, maybe.
I don't know.
All I know is every time I go by Ballinasloe, it starts to rain.
I mean, this is true, right?
It was an opportunity for Muldoon to be that Connacht link. So if it was an O'Gara, for example, as we've been discussing, well, you've John Muldoon as your defence coach, for example. And I'm sure John Muldoon would love to have been part of the coaching setup at Connacht, but maybe not necessarily under Kieran Keane.
They can always ring him and say, here, listen, this opportunity has arisen. What do you think?
He's on the Pat Lam. He's hitched his wagon to Pat Lam now. I don't think he's going to be changing his mind on that one anytime soon, to be able to coach in the Premiership. I'm just saying
actually it's the right thing to do probably for him in terms of get out, understand exactly what the Premiership is like, and then come back in a couple of years' time to be the successor to Ronan O'Gara. It all, you can start building these things.
No, it is. You've been thinking a lot about this year, but it actually is the right thing for him. I know we don't want to go on about him, but he has to experience something else, because he's been there so long. All he's ever seen is
it's what O'Gara did, and it's worked out really well for him to get out of there as well. So, any more comments for us now? Or are we gonna move on? Would you believe the internet is down this morning in here? I'm glad you're all watching it on the internet back where you are, but our Wi-Fi isn't working, so that's why I'm looking at my phone. I'm not being as rude as most of us generally are by using the phones. And what did you say there? Sorry, I'm on the phone.
Don't see the need for the country accent there for that.
No, I'm from the country. Morning, lads. The principle of not celebrating goals was started by Denis Law. Okay, well done, Michael. I fully remember this way before my time.
Wow.
So it's a back heel that knocks Man United down to relegates Man United, playing for Man City.
Yeah. There's a couple of things on that.
Doesn't
it's
celebrate.
A brilliant link that that viewer has come up with, but it wasn't technically the goal that relegated Manchester United.
Look at you. Look at you. Who do you support, Dave? How do you know all this?
I'm saying it was not the goal that relegated Manchester United. That's
history
a myth.
records it.
That is a myth that has
I don't
grown
care. It may not
in the intervening 44 years.
You may bust that myth all you want, but that is the goal that relegated.
Whether or not it's true,
yeah. I mean, come on.
But
we all know it is that.
It's a brilliant observation from that listener that that did happen with Denis Law. But for some reason, there seemed to be a 40-year break from that tradition, and it has been rekindled by the professionals of the modern-day game.
Cristiano Ronaldo for United against Sporting Lisbon is the first non-celebration that I can remember. I mean, was it ostentatious? Was he like pushing everybody away? No, I'm just going to take it. This is for my Sporting Lisbon
Six-pack time.
Yeah.
No, it actually, I remember that goal. It was more of he just kind of acknowledged the Sporting fans.
Right.
He didn't have both hands up and apologising like Mo Salah did last week, for example.
Ocean is Sligo, Shannon side for Leitrim. Willie Hegarty just covers Roscommon. Oh, so who covers the Leitrim games? That's a good trip.
I'm embarrassed to say that I've never listened to a championship match involving Leitrim on local radio, so I just don't know who that is.
Raf will tell us. Raf Diallo.
Surely Willie's got enough sway over that part of the world that he can say, look lads, I know I'm the Roscommon man, but I'm doing this game.
Dave Sheehan says, don't worry, I got the reference.
Hey, there we go. John Anderson, brilliant.
The Newcastle John Anderson, he looks like him, same stripes.
He does actually look like him, and he is wearing black and white stripes.
But he was Scottish, not a dub.
Yes, he was Scottish, yeah.
Right, let's talk some Gaelic football. Fionan Fitzgerald has been at the various launches that are ongoing around the country at the moment. The Munster hurling and football launches were together. The Leinster ones were separated, I think. We'll bring you some of the stuff from all of the launches over the course of the next while and on Championship Sunday as well. But I think we're going to Fionan Fitzgerald from Kerry to talk to us about... here's John Duggan talking to Fionan Fitzgerald at the Munster GAA launch.
What? I think so, yeah. I think it's something to look forward to. Look, at the end of the day, I think most inter-county players will be looking for games, and the new format lends itself to that anyway. And obviously you're playing games maybe all over the country, so it's almost like a little mini league in a way for that time, insofar as you're playing home away, maybe a game in Croker as well, so that would be exciting. But I suppose from our end really we're looking at the Munster Championship semi-final in a couple of weeks' time is our main focus for now.
Do you think the gap is closing between the likes of Clare and Tip and yourselves in Cork?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Munster Championship has been on the up for the last couple of years. We've had a few very tight battles and just been lucky to come out. So I mean, reality is Munster Championship is probably in the healthiest position it's been in quite some time. So it's good. I think you have to be on your game. We know that we have had very tough battles, as I said, over the last couple of years, and I think it adds more to the Munster Championship as well. The feeling of satisfaction if you do come out and win it then.
How did the April month in the club priority work for you? Was there much of a difference?
I think it worked quite well in Kerry. I'm not sure it was the same in every other county, but basically I got four club games in, so and the senior club championship was run off the intermediate and junior and so on as well, so there were high quality games and packed into a short enough period of time. It's an intense enough schedule for inter-county players, but I think it worked out well in Kerry anyway. I enjoyed it myself.
How do you feel sharper now because of that going into
definitely. Look, like I said, games is what you're looking for,
not training.
And exactly, it lends itself to better competition, and like I said, the consistency of games is the big thing really.
Would you miss the Gooch around the place?
I would miss him alright, but I suppose I'm lucky I get to play with him at Crokes, so I had him for the last 4 weekends, and he's as hungry and mad for road as ever.
In terms of the All-Ireland race, Fionn, is it hard not to think about Dublin, given their dominance of the last years?
Look, I suppose Dublin are the standard bearers. They've basically they've won the last 3 All-Irelands, and their record speaks for itself. Look, the reality is we can't really get too sidetracked on that at this stage of the year. But if you're going to win an All-Ireland, more than likely you're going to have to beat Dublin along the way. So they're looking strong as they ever were, and that's something to maybe look forward to later in the year. But for the moment, we're looking at Munster Championship really, and see how we get on from there.
Have you found it hard in the last years? Could be very close. You pushed Dublin a couple of times, Mayo last year. Is it harder to come back every year, or is it something you can get out of your system quite quickly?
I don't think so. I wouldn't say it's something you can get out of your system quite quickly. Those defeats stick in the mind, alright. But I don't think it's harder to come back. I suppose you have to try and bring something different every year. what we brought over the last number of years has brought us up short, and we basically need to bring something different this year, or we're looking at the same results. So we're going to do everything we can and leave no stone unturned to try and do that.
Are the Ravens in the background calling time on Dublin or calling time on Kerry? Is it a harbinger of doom for who? Are they three-eyed Ravens?
Three-eyed Ravens, yeah. I knew there was a Game of Thrones.
There was a lot of footballers speak there from Fionan where he talked about, the Munster Championship has been really on the up in the last couple of years, which it clearly hasn't.
Well, Tipperary are a real team now. Okay.
They haven't made their dent in the Munster Championship as yet.
Yeah.
And Kerry have coasted. They haven't got close to Kerry. That is a real dent in the Munster Championship. Tip getting to a Munster final in Killarney and running them close. Kerry have coasted through the last couple of Munster Championships. I don't see it going back to actually the day when Fionn had to kick the equaliser in the sunshine in Fitzgerald Stadium to snatch a draw. The day when James O'Donoghue was brought down for the penalty that wasn't in the eyes of everybody from Cork and probably a lot of people besides. But I think we do need a decent Munster Championship this year. I don't know will we get it. I don't know will Tip be the team to rattle a few cages, or Cork, have they got any improvement in them at all to try and get close to Kerry?
Cork will have players back, obviously. They get the Nemo contingent back. They have a couple of fellas coming back from injury, but Cork you just don't know. You never know, because it's so it's just a mess down there from a club perspective. It's just a mess. You've clubs fighting with clubs. You've got administration fighting with plenty of clubs. It'll be the worst thing, because you just never know what kind of team we're going to come out, and they're so brittle.
It feels like Cork might be on the verge of something. There's a piece at the weekend in the Sunday Times about how they've finally got their fundraising arm up and running, and it looks like the long-standing behemoth that was the current administration is coming to an end. Like, we've said that now for the last decade.
It's been a while.
But it looks like, at some point Frank is going to have to step aside, and the new modernisation will actually automatically happen, and that might suddenly turn Cork into proper rivals for Dublin in terms of organisation and finances, you would hope.
Well, you would hope, but it depends if the modernisation is in the shall we say, following in the footsteps and the mirror image of what is left before, or is going to be completely revolutionary. Because that's what it needs. Cork, the Rebels, they need to actually just start really shaking things up a bit down there.
Well, Dublin has to be their blueprint.
Yeah.
Do what, in relative terms, what the Dublin County Board did 15 years ago, 10 years ago, both in hurling and football, which is what Cork needs.
The red wave, I can see the plan.
Well, there you go. I think Cork are the type of team that the Super 8s could suit perfectly. They are in that second tier of teams that realistically will look at the season and go, do you know what, we could break into that top 8, get 3 massive quarterfinals.
I think
I'd put Tip in ahead of them.
Yeah.
I think if Cork got into the Super 8, they could have a pretty damaging campaign, because I think they just don't have... I don't think necessarily they have the panel as yet to go through something like a campaign like that. And I think if they manage to kind of get through and muddle through, but I can't see... I think Tip are actually further down the line. Tip have got some serious players. Tip are a very good outfit.
Yeah.
And I think they've been... he's been blooding a lot of good younger guys. He's managed to kind of remove some of the older fellas that were kind of holding things together for the last couple of years. And now he is a very exciting... they can score. They can rack up big scores.
You mentioned there about Cork potentially having the Nemo players coming back. It's interesting that so few of the Corfin players are actually ending up going back with Galway.
Yeah.
So few of the cooler hurlers are going back with the Dubs, compared to the amount who you think would definitely at least warrant a place on the bench, if not starting. And we're starting to see that period of the year where players announce that they're not actually going to play inter-county football, just as we tip into May, when you think, I did the 9 months of gruel so that I can play some games in summer sunshine. Me, the same as a bunch of players who've decided we're not interested in playing.
Yeah, it seems to be, well, is it a recent phenomenon? I don't know, but it definitely seems to be more prevalent these days that, guys are taking time out or just saying, no, it's not for me, for whatever reason. And I think,
Well, it's been brought forward a bit this time around because of the tweak in the rules, whereby in the past you could play in the Championship and then
go to America,
bail to the States and just abandon your county when it came to the qualifiers. Now, if you play Championship, you can't transfer. You're done. So you look at Brendan Murphy, for example. Carolan must be devastated that they've lost him. But at the same time, in previous seasons, he would have done what he did last year and stuck with them right through that brilliant run, knowing that if they go out at the Leinster Championship at some stage, he can then head off to the States. Can't do that now, which is why guys like Brendan, like Liam Silk in Galway, they're deciding now in April, early May, we're out of here.
And it's very tough because, you know, you look at what Carlo did during the league and the momentum, obviously, that was there. And then it's extremely tough both on the player, and it's extremely tough on the panel, and it's extremely tough on the management, because you're being forced into a decision, an early decision, that is going to wreak havoc on all of those different parts, rather than actually saying, well, I can have the decision kind of here in my back pocket, and if things come to pass, which odds favour they may, well, then I can pull it out and say, right, I'm off, you know. But now you're having to really, as Dave says, bring that up to kind of fast forward it a bit, which just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth.
Well, it's the law of unintended consequences. It's supposed to clamp down on players leaving their clubs in the lurch later on in the year, and now it's like, well, they're going to leave their clubs in the lurch for much earlier. Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, well,
it makes sense if it exists totally in a vacuum, but it doesn't make sense in the real world where the offers from the States are so significant that players can't afford to turn them down.
Yeah, and I mean, it hits those types of players who are, such as Brendan Murphy, you know, who are big players for a relatively smaller county, but they're vital players for that county, and vital in the sense of everything around, be it the atmosphere around the panel, everything. You know, you can imagine that Carlo panel now. You know, like, I mean, really, their kingpin has been ripped out of it. Where does that leave the rest of us?
But I think it shows where the league is at in the minds of most Division 3 and Division 4 counties. It's absolutely massive. Like, Carlo have achieved their goals for 2018, and I think Brendan Murphy, you could see his tweets the night that they got promoted to Division 3. They basically felt that they had basically done whatever they needed to do this year, and he's feeling fine now that he's leaving them.
Because, like, you know,
well, that's the reality of it, and like, I mean, it's a big offer, and that's it. So, but I also think there's another side to it. Whereas,
let's talk about that, because, like,
I just don't feel fellas, like, I mean, okay, so if you go to the second tier then of the teams, and
Divisions 2 and 3,
Meath would hope that they're still involved in that. You know, back, like, I mean, I 99, I joined the panel, 2000 championship debut, and between 2000 and probably 2003, 2004, you know, the amount of starts I got in the championship were bitty, you know, coming on as sub, different stuff, whilst I was playing some good football for the club, winning club championships, So there was an apprenticeship that was there. You know, I was speaking to Niall McKagan and Seamus Kenny about this. Niall was kind of sitting behind Mark Riley for a number of years, probably longer than he would have, you know, probably 4 or 5 years. And really, in the modern day, he probably would have just pulled and said, listen, I've had enough of this. Because you're seeing an awful lot of that now. Players who are doing a year, maybe not even a year, they're kind of not getting a consistent run, or maybe they're not in the team, maybe they are, maybe they're being pulled out, and they just say, no, I'm done, I don't need this. Now, there's a myriad of reasons for that, but the old thing of, and I think this is an issue, and it's certainly an issue maybe in Meath, and it might be an issue in some of those second tier. Dublin don't have that issue because you have obviously the tantalising carrot of winning an All-Ireland and winning Leinster. So when you go in there, you're saying, well, even if I'm not getting on, I'm going to sit in this bench and I'm going to work hard to try.
And that's the boat you were in, because you came into a panel that had just won the All-Ireland. You were kind of waiting for your chance while the team was getting to an All-Ireland final, winning a Leinster title in 2001. So you weren't in a dissimilar boat to where some of these Dublin guys are.
Correct. And now you kind
of look at the Meath footballers of today.
Yeah. So, but without one, you can't get the other. So in other words, without guys who are willing to put the apprenticeship in, you will never go back to those days because the pool of players continues to shrink. You know, so you then have to go to the next level and the next level to try and fill out the panel. And there is a thing of, like, there's a guy called Brian Conlon who plays with Simonstown, won 2 Meath championships in a row. He was a Meath under-21 captain last year, and he came off the panel. Now, I don't know for whatever reasons, we're not passing aspirations on him, but he's a very good player, very good athlete, and a guy that if he was willing to work and stay in there and stay involved and get that experience of training at an inter-county level, I could see really develop. And listen, he may have other reasons for doing it, but it's a thing of, I learned so much more from being around and being pushed, and even mentally you learn that when the resolve has to be there. So even then in a game, when you have to go into that type of resolve, it's there. You know, it's not a situation where you're just saying, oh, I'm throwing up the white flag. And the second effect, just the last effect is, when those guys then go back to their club, they become a pariah in the club because they no longer ever want to go back to the county. So whereas they should be seen as being the main guys with the club, right, they no longer want to go back to the county, so they're not really pushing as hard to get back to that inter-county level. And if they're really, you know, say, disenchanted with what's been going on, they actually could become an awful kind of drag on the club, because you'll have other players looking to them to say, you need to lead us, and they're saying, well, particularly I went there for 2 years, I had the experience of inter-county, not really my bag, and now I'm back with the club and I'm going to enjoy myself. So actually then that whole environment
so alters. That culture also gets impacted.
Yeah.
Is it too cliche to say that it's about the level of time and commitment and control that inter-county managers are trying to exert, that this doesn't seem to be a problem in those counties where there's like forward-thinking management that has a commitment to...
I've seen some guys argue this. I've seen some guys listen. Like I love the I suppose the environment that was around being an inter-county player. I like the discipline of it. I like the fitness of it.
The lifestyle.
I like the health. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't like that, if you would rather be going drinking pints, or, you know, I'm not even saying that. I'm not saying that every fella's saying that. But if you would rather having your own life and being able to make your own decisions and do your own stuff and blah blah blah, and you want to do it, well then go ahead and do it. But if you choose to, and that's a lifestyle, well then you choose that lifestyle and you choose the challenges that come with that lifestyle. And you know, if we've had Dave, say, in a one of these development programs, say in Meath, and he's been coming through 14, 15, 16, 17, and I think these development squads have a lot to answer for, to be honest with you, because if he's been coming all the way up through, he's been playing with Meath all the way, or Kildare, or whoever it is, let's say he's been the main man all the way through, and he comes into a senior panel now at 19 or 20, and we as the management team say, let's test this guy out here, and we drop him for a few games, and all of a sudden outside influences, be it his family or whatever, say, you don't need to take that. You've been the main man for the last 6 or 7 years. Pull yourself off that. Wait till the next manager comes in, because it's becoming like the Premiership. The next manager will probably be in 2 or 3 years. You can nearly ride it out. But also, from his own perspective, he's been in the merry-go-round of an inter-county setup for the last 7, 8, 9 years. You know, like I spoke to Nigel Crawford. Nigel was 18 when he won in All-Ireland. By the time Nigel was 28, he had 10 years of being in that kind of cocoon. If you've been the main man in these development squads since under 14, under 15, you're nearly, you know, you're 10 years by the time you're 24.
Where's
25.
the fun in it?
Yeah.
Correct. Like, you want to, when you're a teenager, you want to play club football with your pals.
With your buddies.
Yeah. Guy you've been in school with, guys you kicked around the green with. You don't want to be yanked out of that into some development squad with faceless managers, guys who are up against it you've never met before. You're a kid, like.
And the pressure
play
of
for
it.
the crack.
Yeah.
We've had a few comments about this, and we'll come back to them in a couple of minutes' time as well. Just a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you this morning with Air, the home of Air Sport. Get amazing live sporting content free with Air Broadband. Now, I'm going to be speaking with Richard Chambers, who is a Roma fan, live in studio in just a moment. First, though, here's Sinead Ahern from Dublin.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a first, it's a first national title that we'd be taking home. So that's obviously something that would be great for Dublin and for this group of players. I suppose anytime you get the opportunity to do that, you want to perform well, and you want to put on a good display, I suppose, for the supporters that come out, and fans, friends, and family. So I think we're just trying to focus on our performance this week, and as I said, if we get our hands on a cup as part of that, that'd be absolutely terrific.
With some of the high profile games you've had, and obviously with the All-Ireland final last year, massive crowd coming out, Parnell Park's not too far for the Dublin supporters to travel, particularly this weekend. I'm sure you'd be hoping a lot of them will make their way into Donacarney for this weekend.
Definitely. I mean, from the clubs, from not just girls teams, but for players or for fans, I suppose, that might have seen and gone into last year's game, that hopefully got a taste of what it can be like, and will be interested in coming back. And I think the standard is just improving year on year. So I was selecting 2 great games of football, and obviously Mayo supporters usually travel very well, so hopefully we'll get a really good crowd in Parnell Park.
You've been playing, and I don't mean this in any kind of insulting way, with the Dublin team for quite a while now. In terms of the profile that ladies football has built up in recent times, given the Lidl deal, given the TV and double headers with TG Cara matches in the regular section this year, Ayr showing a few games as well, I think the game has exploded in the last few years, hasn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think the steps and the developments that ladies football can make year on year is huge. It's maybe in the men's game it's gone so incremental in terms of the changes that happen year on year. Whereas in ladies football, I think the game has come on an awful lot, but equally has huge strides that it can still take.
All right, Sinead Ahern speaking with Will there, as you can see from the wide shot. Yeah, there you go. That's the one. Richard is here. Good morning to you.
Morning, Ger.
A proper Roma ultra. You brought your scarf. Bought in Rome.
Ultra is the wrong word, but yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of the club since early years. I think it was when I was about 4 or 5. I was living in Lahinch in Clare, and we didn't have the channels properly, so we had Gazzetta, Football Italia. We only had Channel 4. It was the only one which worked. So I grew up watching Francesco Totti. Everybody else in the schoolyard was about Eric Cantona. It was Totti for me, and then from going to college with a load of people from Italy and many trips over there, it was the only club that was ever sort of a part of my life in any way,
So how dangerous is it to go to a match?
It's not really that dangerous, unless it is in these sort of settings, the Champions League game with English clubs, is that this is where this has flared up before. There's a really hardcore, nasty element, a small but a fairly vocal group within Roma's ultras, and you've seen them. Everybody saw the footage by what happened to Sean Cox there outside Anfield under the Kop last time round. You'll spot them a mile away. So any Liverpool fan who is there tonight, you'll see them. They've big black jackets, they've blue jeans, white trainers. It's all about image to them, and they basically, I think it's an element of the English football hooliganism past which they've mirrored themselves on. So they think it's a badge of honour. They want to go and fight with English football fans. They want to go and do these flash stabbings, as they call them, stabbing in the buttocks. And that's something, it's a badge of honour for them. And they will flare up, and it's happened time after time after time, whether it was Spurs a couple of years ago, United in the late 2000s as well. They'll just target and they will prey on people. It doesn't matter if the other side are getting involved in anything either.
Has there been fallout from those incidents in the past? Because that's kind of the criticism here, is that it should have been anticipated, it should have been expected. Yeah. There should have been more policing ahead of the Liverpool game, and what the hell's going to happen tonight?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's no secret. This has happened, as we say, so many times before. And Roma will talk up a big game. They'll always talk about, we're a very family-run club, and they'll have all these youth initiatives. But they've been very, very poor at weeding out this element. And that goes for every Italian football club, whether it's Napoli or Juve as well. The ultra and the power of the ultras in these clubs, in terms of just even the administrative power. Like a lot of these, it's incredible, really. I mean, like, even if you look at what some of the shots from Anfield of the Roma end the last time, there was banners up saying free DDS. DDS is Daniele De Santis. He's a Roma ultra who shot dead a Napoli ultra outside the Italian Cup final a few years ago. And this is something like, I mean, the Roma as a club, they know who all these people are.
Yeah.
They have, like, if you'll see photos of Francesco Totti shaking hands with these people and, going over to plead with them because they've had the power to stop games before, and they've, run managers out of town. And it's for an international football club. Run the rule to be run over them by 40 to 50 ultras is pathetic, really.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well for their future. And yet at the same time, they have had a bit of a revolution over the last couple of years. They've definitely righted the ship, and here they are in the Champions League semi-final, albeit with a massive hill to climb.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really expects us to come through this one, really. I mean, there was a bit of belief for some reason ahead of the Barcelona one. I think it's something that Eusebio Di Francesco has done really well, is still this strange sort of belief in this squad, which hasn't really achieved anything domestically this year. I mean, I think what he's sort of been saying ahead of this game is, like, if you don't believe that we're going to do this, stay at home.
Yeah.
Don't bother coming in at all. Like, I mean, that goes for the players and the fans as well. But I mean, in terms of righting the ship, I don't think we have really. The financial situation of the club is just in rag order, to be honest, Ger. And I mean, the reports in the Italian media this week are that all of the exploits that we've carried out this year, knocking out Barcelona, getting to the Champions League semi-finals, all that's actually going to mean for the club going forward is that we don't have to sell a major player this summer.
Right.
So, I mean, not a great win.
So I thought the Italian-American owner had come in and kind of begun to fix things.
He's not a huge financial backer. What he's done is just bring a professionalism to it. And you'll see, like, it's such an image-conscious club now. He's trying to run it like an NBA team. Like, of course, he's involved in the Boston Celtics as well. Like, he has all this focus on social media and all these link-ups with American sports clubs as well. And you'll see that, the big ticket for Roma every week seems to be just to go viral on social media and get people around the world talking about them and tweeting about them. But in terms of actually rooting out the problems in the club and fixing it, hasn't done a huge amount.
Yeah, the language been used by the president this week was a bit different, though, wasn't it? Where he talked about one or two effing morons, or the scourge of this club, and that's taken on those ultras, isn't it? It's certainly verbally in a way that maybe previous presidents wouldn't have done. Will there be a backlash against him from?
There's always been a backlash against him. I think so. I think there's always been, an element who see him as an outsider, despite whatever he has done to sort of steady the ship in a way. I mean, he's just seen as an American who doesn't understand the club. Okay. Francesco Totti was out last night saying, "Here, look, we're ambassadors for Rome. Every one of us needs to pull up our socks here and do what we can."
The cops have banned alcohol around the area in the stadium. So there's the stadium on the map.
Yeah, I'll talk you through this here because there's two key areas you want to avoid now if you're in Rome tonight, and that's the Ponte Milvio. You'll see it just up the north of the map there. That's a pedestrian bridge, and you'll have a lot of ultras, and some of the worst elements of the fans will be hanging around there, and they'll be waiting for people to cross over. And then the main bridge, if you look at the stadium there, you'll see Foro Italico there. That's the Ponte Duca d'Osta, and that is the main bridge going to the stadium. So what Liverpool fans tonight are actually going to be told to stay in the centre of Rome, and they'll be bussed out. They'll be bussed directly to the stadium. Don't go walking at night, lads. You will have problems. Like, there's no way around it. There is going to be issues tonight. And what I think police in England and police in Rome as well are saying is that there's an element there of Liverpool fans who will be out looking for reprisals tonight. And that's something we saw in 2007. There was a huge battle on that bridge there, the Ponte Duca d'Osta, between United fans who'd been attacked over at Old Trafford a couple of weeks before. And I think it was something like 8 to 10 people were stabbed that night. So,
notwithstanding all this, a great club to go and watch when it's not a Champions League game.
The atmosphere there is incredible.
The derby.
That's it. The derby is incredible. It's just unbelievable. It is a very family-friendly club. It's just when it comes down to the Champions League nights, it's just the worst elements turn up. Because a lot of these guys don't even turn up week in, week out. They just see this as a badge of honour. They can come and have a go at the English, who they see as their forerunners, as hooligans. And it's pathetic in a way, but that's just something to be mindful of. Richard, good stuff. We know you got to go and be on Pat Kenny, so thanks very much for that. Here's some Ross Tucker from last night talking about the Castor Semenya situation.
We know that between 2011 and 2015, there were a group of athletes, so Semenya's not the only one. At the 2011 and 13 World Championships, where the IAAF then did these studies, there were 9 athletes who had these conditions, and we know she's one of them. So that leaves 8 basically unaccounted for. So they are there. She's obviously the high-profile one by virtue of the leak. And there's no doubt that the lowering of testosterone affects anyone. We know that because almost a parallel issue facing sport now is how does sport deal with transgender females? So that's men who then want to compete in women's sport. And they also take the same medication, which lowers their testosterone. Their limit is also 5, according to the new IOC guideline. And their performance also suffers to more or less the same degree. So that seems to me to be actually a conservative prediction. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even more.
That's Ross Tucker. You can watch the whole thing back, youtube.com/off the ball for all of our extended pieces. It's a good YouTube channel to subscribe to if you're a YouTube user. Anytime we go live with stuff, we'll send you a notification. There's loads of good stuff up there that you might have missed. It's the new podcast. Turns out. So we were getting in the middle of that GAA discussion, and Richard had to go out and be on Pat Kenny in the middle of it. So what's the fix, right? What's the fix to convince people to stay involved during the summer? Is it to make the league be during the summer, and so that's the thing that everybody looks forward to, and that's meaningful because you can see clear signs of progression?
I don't know if there is a fix because the lure of New York and Boston is just so strong. We know that there's a financial side to it as well. There's the getting away for the entire summer when you're not in college, having done exams. Brendan Murphy is the outlier. These guys are guys who are in university.
But hang on, no one begrudges anybody a summer off. But when it becomes every summer off and you're always missing the championship because you're a really good player from a county who has no hope, you wouldn't go every year. If you were Brendan Murphy and you had a chance of getting Carlo into the 2nd division, for example, suddenly you're playing 2nd division football. It's like you're part of that revolutionary team. And if there was if you win Division 4, Division 3 and you're in an All-Ireland quarter-final at the end of a summer, there's ways of fixing it so that the championship structures make sense to give you a chance to propel you forward into genuine big games.
If it's that big of a draw, which it potentially is, and you'd have to look at the numbers of the amount of players that go out and all this different stuff and the effect it has. But if it is that big of a draw, and if you're being serious about it, without just denying it and saying, "Oh, well, it's over there and it only affects a few kind of smaller tier groups," right?
You need it the most.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. So let's have a look at it. Well, then, if you're going to fit it in, we'll fit it in with the plan, fit it in with the calendar again, give it a time frame. Like how long does it really, should it really last over there? Like, I mean, it could be done within
3-4 weeks.
I'd say probably even less. You know, I think I was brought out a couple of years back for a weekend.
Can't remember.
Yeah, not sure exactly when. But it was a weekend thing. Came in on the Friday or the Thursday, bam, a couple of games, and then back home on the Monday. Now, you know, that wasn't probably all by the book, but if it is, you could tighten it up, you could get things going, and you could say, right, we're just going to do it relatively quickly over the thing. And I know that, okay, it wouldn't have the same financial reward or whatever it is, the offers that are out there. But if it is going to happen, and it is happening, well then put it into a calendar, maybe start it later on.
And you're ripping up the New York footballing championship structure for what reason? Like, it's a summer game over there for all of these Irish people who've either grown up over there or have emigrated to New York. Yeah. They want to be able to go to Gaelic Park every Sunday and watch their championship unfold. Scaling it back to a
maybe you could have a separate competition where maybe you have no ringers allowed for their main championship, and then they have some kind of blitz weekend or festival of football in September where every players can come out and, like, you know, there's a way of fixing it so that there is something that you can make attractive.
Well, they're saying, you know, I've heard a lot of kind of musings about, oh no, we're going to just keep it, you know, homegrown, and we're going to, you know, we don't necessarily want this influx anymore.
Yeah.
You know, they're all saying that, of course, but then it happens.
But it's massively expensive. Like, so
massively.
220 grand was the figure that we heard quoted for one of the teams that was playing in the senior championship. A club team, that was the cost of running it for the summer.
Mm.
Now, the vast majority of it is clearly going on imports.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's a completely separate issue.
This is money that's coming out of the pockets of private individuals.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not like
the money the GPA is going after, and it's the money the county boards are going after, but they're not allowed to go after it. But it's fine for the players to take them, because it's money going to the players directly.
It is, yeah, but
separate issue.
But the clubs aren't, well, to my knowledge, are not fundraising to pay these monies to these players. This is just a guy who is involved at one of the clubs over there, has the money. Why don't we get your man to come over and we'll
the
pay
same
him
guys who are
$10,000.
giving the money to the county boards and to the GPA, and that's my point. It's like
it is, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you change it? I suppose then you have to, if that's not going to be, and I think Dave is right, it's a good point. If you don't want to mess with their championship, well then you have to obviously make the desire to go less so from an Irish perspective. So you have to give Brendan Murphy, for example, something that he really feels that he wants to hang around for.
It needs to be incentive-based rather than deterrent-based.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
good quality football matches in front of big audiences that are getting coverage, that reach a conclusion which gives you promotion/relegation, and at the end of that, a playoff match of meaningful significance.
You know, I think the Waterford manager was talking in the paper today, and he's chatting about, you know, no one really cares about what Waterford think, and the second tier would become kind of like, you know, the second tier soccer championships.
Yeah, he's talking about Arsenal in the Europa League.
Yeah,
Tom McGlinchey's obviously not an Arsenal fan, doesn't really care about qualifying for the Champions League next season from Wenger.
But it's I think, again, all of this is around the promotion of that, the marketing of it, the incentivization that's there, or decentivization. All that different stuff has to come into play in this, and it has to, because if it is, and it goes along the current road, and like, I mean, I would be very worried about what that Super 8 will bring.
He's right. Like, the Super 8 will bring loads of amazing games, and we'll all be delighted that those games are on. But underneath it, there is no motivation for the tier 3 and 4 weaker counties to continue to play in the summer. It's actually more of a deterrent, because the interprovincial championships get far less significant, really. Like, and all that matters is the Super 8s, and it's going to be clear there'll be 2 places up for grabs really in the Super 8s. There's 4 nailed on teams guaranteed to get there. There's 2 who we think are probably more than likely to get there, and then there's 2 up for grabs. And
well, the interprovincial championships are probably the blocker to ripping this whole thing up anyway. You know, like, I mean, they would be the sacred cows that would be there. So the Leinster, you know, the Leinster province would say, well, hold on a second, we get revenue from this and you know, from both the hurling and football side, and you know, you'd have the Munster hurling, you have all this different stuff, but slowly but surely they are. Now, maybe there is a blueprint that's in there in the vaults of Croke Park, which is, well, this is another major step, which actually then gets rid of the provinces completely, and we end up in a Champions League style type of operation. You end up bottom 2, go up into the bottom 2, top 2.
Yeah.
You have an A, you have a B.
That's the key. That is the key, because the question is always to these players, would you play in a B Championship. And
they always say no,
that's
right?
the way it's framed. Of course they say no. But that the implication or the assumption being that you're starting in the B Championship. You never actually have a place in the A Championship. Where under what you just said, at least you get to start in the Senior 1. You get to play in the same championship as Dublin and Kerry and Mayo. And if you manage to finish in the top 2 of that group, well, up you go into the last 16 of the All-Ireland Senior 1. If you finish in the bottom 2, you're playing in the last 16 of All-Ireland Senior 2.
It's too complicated. Have 4 divisions.
Why is it too complicated? You've got 8 groups of 4.
The team who wins, because it's too complicated. Because if there's going to be a junior or a second or a senior B, and no one's interested, and at those games all become dead rubbers. There'll be no TV coverage. There'll be no radio coverage. No one will care about them.
No, it's about how you market and promote it. As Anthony says, if you play a last 16 Senior 2 game the same day as Dublin are playing Mayo in the last 16 of Senior A,
the players will be in America.
And it's in TV and it's in Croke Park. Well, see, they can't go to America if they've already played one of the games in the championship. That's why Brendan Murphy's gone now.
But if you,
I wouldn't change guys leaving.
I'm saying have 4 divisions with promotion and relegation, but the winners of Division 4 get into an All-Ireland quarter-final. The winners of Division 3 get into an All-Ireland quarter-final. Top 2 in Division 2 and top 4 in Division 1. So everybody has a chance of winning the All-Ireland. So if Tipperary are in Division 4 and have an amazing year, they reach an All-Ireland quarter-final at having topped their group, which is Division 4, but also got promotion. So every game is meaningful the whole way along.
Yeah.
That's it.
And you could, at least with that, you could start it in May and be done by mid-August easily.
Totally, yeah. And you can run your provincial championships in March. Everything starts on Paddy's Day and finishes on May Day. And you've got a full month for the clubs.
Still give April to the clubs.
Well, I give May to the clubs.
That works out brilliantly.
You could give May to the clubs properly and start this in the June bank holiday weekend, have it over and...
Well, if you condense it all and you did it actually and you said, okay, we're going to start this time, we're going to do it for X amount, you wouldn't have to give any time to the club. You could actually say, like as a club manager, I'd say to myself, right fellas, we're not going to be back in January or February, we're going to come back in March.
And the way you go and have the crack.
Like, I mean, January, February this year was a nightmare as a club manager. I think we had 2 pitch sessions in 8 weeks.
Because of the weather.
Because of the weather.
So
and you're not going to say, oh, that was an anomaly. Like it's Ireland.
No,
it's probably going to be pretty bad next January and February.
Climate change is not going to be good for Ireland.
No.
One last point. Tom Ryan, the new Director General of the GPA, or not the GPA, Freudian slip of the GAA, was saying that Tommy had his finger on that. You think you said the wrong thing there. It's okay. I spotted it myself. That he doesn't really disagree in broad brushstrokes with anything the CPA are saying at the moment. Is that positive to hear, or do you expect there to be anything off the back of that?
Well, we were actually due to meet last night, and unfortunately we couldn't be due to a funeral that the president had to go to. But is it positive to hear? Yes, it is. But what exactly that means and where exactly that goes, and I suppose the question, we would like to ask, kind of Tom is, well, what exactly does that comment mean from your perspective, and where does that put us?
Yeah.
If what we're looking for is a regular fixture calendar, which brings the whole lot into play, blank sheet, if you need to start with that, start with it, and let's start fitting in all the different parts, well then great. But if it isn't, and it's just more of kind of, well, we'll see how it goes, and we'll see what happens here, and we'll see what happens there, and and it's more the old incremental change and everything else. We'll come back, we'll talk about it for another couple of years, and maybe that's like the thing is, it's coming to a critical point, I feel, and because of obviously the media coverage of it, and obviously the accessibility of the amount of times you hear different stories from around the country. Before you would never have had that, and that's only going to increase.
Yeah.
So something happens in wherever, you hear about it pretty much instantly,
it's
and
amplified
it's
now.
promoted. Yeah, of course. So that amplification is only going to increase. So that noise is only going to increase, and I think they're aware of that. Them being the GAA, I think John Horan is aware of it, but. They have this big thing where they're talking about fixture analysts going to go into every county, and we would feel that a fixture analyst, you throw a fixture analyst from Croke Park into Kildare, he's going to be sitting there seeing how the championship went, but he's going to be sitting there not necessarily questioning the county board. He's going to be told, well, we had to do that because of this, but that again is just trying to fix the problem within a structure that is all broken. Instead of fixing it here, and then the rest will actually be able to sort itself out.
So his argument is that they would like to keep the power devolved to each county board, because ultimately you've got to improve local governance. Otherwise, if you apply something from top down, then as we've seen with lots of GAA rules, they're more observed in the breach than the following,
Yes.
or whatever that's
So the April thing, for example, let's keep April as a club month, but there won't be any sanctions for it, so we leave it up to you how you want to run that. That's all fine, but then you get a situation where you have an anomaly, which isn't really an anomaly, like the weather that we had in January, February, March. Games are postponed, so now you're trying to wedge things in. There's back fixtures. Meath actually just recently, up till yesterday, got a kind of a diktat out, which was basically there are going to be no games called off from now on. Player welfare is out the window. Don't kind of quite, which is unbelievable. So what ends up happening is the pressure that's being applied on people who are actually doing the fixtures in the counties, to be fair to them, they have an unbelievably small window to actually get all these games in. So between hurling and football, if you're a dual player, you're going to end up being kind of Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, and all this different stuff going on. You've under 19 competitions now being wedged in. You've got the under 20s, which are going to start. So there's just been layer upon layer upon layer being thrown at this, but there's only a finite amount of time, and that is the
You still feel like a centralised solution given to the counties and said implement that is the best way to go?
You could do whatever way you decide on your championship format, inter-county championship format, leagues, Champions League style, whatever it is, have it in it. There's your period, done, and here's our period, here's our next period, and that period is going to be a club period.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way you can really go about this, because it solves his situation, because he goes, I know, as an ex-inter-county player, you say, okay, I focus on this and I finish off, get a bit of a break, and I'm into my club season then. My head is clear, I can concentrate on that. They're training 12 months anyway.
Yeah, that is a lifestyle thing as well. All right, we fixed it.
I think we've pretty much fixed every issue in the GAA in the last half an hour.
And Roma at 7-1 tonight.
You think to go through over the two legs? They're 6-4 to win the game.
That's great.
They should win the game, aren't they?
They're capable of beating Liverpool on the night, yes.
Yeah.
I won't be having any of it though.
All right, on that note. Thanks very much to Anthony and Dave for being with us today. Tomorrow is Thursday. Tonight you've got Wednesday Night Rugby on the radio, and you've got a full roadshow, a Heineken Off the Wall special roadshow, Rugby Club roadshow coming from the Mansion House in Dublin with a glittering array of Munster and Leinster legends looking back on Champions Cup victories in the past. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tomorrow morning at 7:45. Good luck.
Free with Air Broadband.